Hello, welcome to Forest Focus for a bonus podcast as Nottingham Forest makes some major moves to get Europe ready, and I'll take a look as well at Swiss Ramble's in-depth analysis of the club's financial position after he went through the 2023-2024 accounts. So the big news is Forest owner Evangelos Marinakis has effectively paused his involvement in the club and put his 80% stake into a blind trust. This is something that relates obviously to multi-club ownership and European football. European rules, UEFA rules say two clubs playing in the same European competition can't be owned by the same person. So in this case, obviously that will be Forest and Olympiacos, who have officially already qualified for the Champions League, and we all hope Forest do as well. So if that does happen, Forest have had to do something to take action, and that has meant Mr. Marinakis, putting his shares into a blind trust and pausing his involvement in the club. No issue with his long-term involvement at all. I saw a piece in the Telegraph by John Percy saying that there's no doubts on that front, but this is something that they had to do to comply with these UEFA rules. So that's what's happened with Evangelos Marinakis, Socrates Komonakis, who did step back from the board, who has a 20% stake. He's now back on the board. Also leaving the board are three directors: Johnny Owen, who we know has been involved for a long while, Michael Duga, and Simon Foster. The latter two are very recent appointments. So you might wonder, why are they going? Why are they being replaced with the following people? Three new people coming in: Timothy Osborne, Matthew Kane, and Matthew Shale. So interestingly, Matthew Shale is a solicitor who was previously on the board of Girona in La Liga. That's person because they, like Manchester City, are owned by the City Football Group. And this is a very similar thing to what happened there, where again you have that separation of clubs, which UEFA want to see. Whether you believe how effective that is or not is a different matter. But Matthew Shale is a solicitor based in the UK, based in Cheltenham, I believe, who, as I say, was on the board of Girona. Is now on the board of Forest. So he's got a lot of expertise in that front. And again, UEFA want to see complete separation. So I think that would be why John Yeo and Michael Dugan and Simon Foster have all departed as well, because City, or say Girona, did a very similar thing where three of their directors stepped down. Three others came on, not Osborne and Kane, but Matthew Shale, as mentioned, was part of that. So he's got some pronounced expertise in this area, which I think is a good thing. Forest have obviously been planning for this for quite a while to put this all in place. So I think they deserve credit for it. One slight word of caution is, as Swiss Ramble said in the accounts that I'll go into, City had done this, United did this with Ineos and Nice and Manchester United, and UEFA complied with it, and UEFA signed off on it. But it was something of a stopgap, a temporary measure, which has come in because of multi-club ownership. This is happening more and more, and might happen with Chelsea and Strasbourg next season as well. But it was kind of a temporary alternative, was the phrase. So it's not totally guaranteed that it will work, but you would hope that Forest wouldn't go this far without getting a nod off the powers that be. So hopefully that sorts everything, and should we make Champions League football, everything's in hand, and it doesn't mean that Forest or Olympiacos have to cede their place and drop down to the Europa League, because that would obviously be a massive blow in football and financial terms, which we shall get into. A nice bridge just to take a quick word for the Trent navigation before we look at the accounts in some detail. So obviously we play Brentford tomorrow night. You can watch that game at the Nav because it's televised. You can also watch the bank holiday game on Monday against Crystal Palace, and there's a lot going on because it's a bank holiday, as I say. So at the Nav, Monday afternoon, there's a music festival, free time, free entry, 15 local bands playing, and then into the evening, it's Palace v Forest, and you can watch that as well, 8 p.m. kickoff, watch it on the big screens, and get your dinner from the outside food court or indoors if you've arrived early enough. Just pause for a drink, apologies. Right, let's get into Swiss Ramble and these accounts. Okay, so this is all taken from Swiss Ramble's newsletter on Substack. I really recommend subscribing to it. You don't have to pay you can get one free, basically, in depth. So I cashed in my chips on this one, and it's really, really detailed. I'll go through some key bits, but yeah, definitely worth subscribing to Swiss Ramble on Substack, and I'll just go through it all. Got a few charts, got a few conclusions at the end. See if you agree or disagree. Put your thoughts in the comments below, of course, and do stick a like on this video if you find it interesting. Right, 23-24 accounts. You probably remember that we reported a £12 million profit, but that came after 101 million pounds in player sales, which is such a huge factor. Operating loss of 73 million. So we'll get into that. There's some real mix of really good stuff. Slightly not alarming, certainly not the word, but words of caution around some of the money that we're spending, but nothing catastrophic, obviously. And I think the main conclusion will revolve that we're going to be in a really good position this summer. So revenue was up 22% to 190 million, but that was countered by operating costs being up 23% to 263 million. I mentioned the huge 101 million pound player sales. That was obviously Brennan Johnson, Oral Mangala and Moussa Niakate. Lyon really did us a favour. Personally, I think they really overpaid for Niakate and Mangala, and obviously Newcastle massively overpaid for Odysseus Vlachodimos. We did get Ali Anson as well for a net spend that was just crazy low. So we really came out on the good side of that. In terms of sales so far this season, we've only sold Freuler and Worrell, and they went for less than 5 million each. So I thought we might get a bit more for Worrell being homegrown, but that does point potentially to that we are a trading club and more sales to come. That operating loss of 73 million, by the way, was one of the highest in the division. Only Everton, Chelsea and Aston Villa had higher operating losses. Chelsea's and Villa's was mental. Villa's PSR position can't be very good at all. I see they're looking to sell stakes in their women's team like Chelsea, but that's a different story. A few other notes of interest. Ticket prices, revenue for ticket prices only went up 3 million. That was after all the big increases. So it goes into my thing about ticket prices. I don't think it's necessarily personally worth hiking them up as much, but the club's got their own arguments for what they did, and they certainly say that they're relatively, compared to other Premier League teams, they're relatively low and offer good value. Commercial revenue was up. It doubled, 15 million to 30 million. For context, Brighton, Wolves, Fulham and Palace were all between 29 million and 31 million. So Forest have climbed their league quite substantially. And the big thing is, if we get in the Champions League, we can attract better sponsorships. Our deal with Kayun, the betting company, ends this summer, so you would hope we could get a bigger sponsorship deal. I mean, I'm not a fan of betting companies sponsoring us as well, so hopefully we could get a different deal on the shirt that would bring in more. The Adidas kit deals worth 3 million a year as well, so that's a good deal for us. Let's look at the wages a little bit and how that translates into commercial revenue as well. So first chart that we have, our wage bill, where it stands in the Premier League, is 9th highest overall. So if I put that up there for those who are listening, not watching, 166 million spent on wages last season tucks us in behind Newcastle and Spurs. A very big gap. Newcastle on 219 million, Spurs on 222. Then Villa, who I mentioned before, 252 million. And then you get into the really big spenders, and you can all guess who they are. But we're at the top of that bracket with West Ham tucked in behind us, Everton, Fulham, and then there's another drop to Brighton, Leeds, who got relegated, Wolves, Bournemouth, Palace, Brentford. I know people hate Brentford, but 114 million wage bill to finish mid-table again is a remarkable success for me. So our wage bill is pretty high, I would say, for where we were, but obviously we've massively succeeded this season. So it'll be really interesting to see where that wage bill goes this summer. New contracts for players based on success. We'll talk a little bit more about that. We've got players who we can sell who are out of contract as well. Might come back to that at the end. But if we're going to sign players of a caliber that we need and want, our wage bill is probably going to go up, which does lead into the wage bill as a percentage of turnover. 88% wages turnover ratio last season, and according to Swiss Ramble, that was the joint worst in the league with Villa. And I think we're hampered there by relatively low income revenue levels. West Ham again and Villa, they do bring in more money than us. So those commercial deals are going to be massive. The long-term development of the trends of the stadium, the Peter Taylor stand, is going to be really important to us. So as a football club, we're very, very reliant on player sales and the backing of the owner. Evangelos Marinakis, according to Swiss Ramble, pumped in 127 million of his own money since buying the club. So he's backed us in every sense that he can. So where did that leave us in terms of PSR? I'll come on to that, and then we'll have a look at a couple of other charts before we come to some conclusions. PSR, so there was a lot of panic about it, but it turns out we came in quite comfortably in the end. After everything was adjusted and taken into account, according to Swiss Ramble, our loss was 67 million. The allowance for those years in the Premier League was 83 million. So we came in comfortably. Again, the context of a lot of player sales. The Brennan sale went into this account because it wasn't allowed in the previous one, which led to the points deduction. So it might put a slant on it. But also on the flip side of that, next year we'll have done 3 years in the Premier League. So our allowable losses will go up to 105 million, which does boost us and make it a level playing field finally with those clubs that have been in the Premier League for 3 years or more. So we're out of that promotion bracket next season, which is great. If we get into Europe, we'll have to comply with UEFA's rules, which is squad cost ratio based. So that means our wages, our transfer fees, and our agent fees added up, and you can counter that with profits from player sales, as you can with PSR. So it's already complicated, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert on it. But the figure, the benchmark figure in 2024 was 80% squad cost ratio. In 2025, that goes to 70%. Ours was 68%. So we'd have come into that fine. If we go into the Champions League next season, our costs will go up, but our revenue will go up. So I would hope that we would be okay with that, and it will all come down to what we can spend. So in terms of revenue next season, if we finish 4th in the Premier League, that would bring in an extra £37 million in prize money. So having finished 17th last season, if we come 4th, it works out we make that extra 37 million. That would be massive. So we'll still have the TV money, but we'd also have, that's the Premier League TV money, we'd also have the European TV money. And I did do a slide on this previously a while ago. This is an updated one from Swiss Ramble's Substack. For those who are listening, not watching, the average income just for TV money for being in the Champions League, the average income is £80 million, which is massive. You can see on the screen there, Man City, Arsenal at the top of the tree, coming in at almost 120 million because they're still in the competition. Liverpool were out, they got 100 million, and Villa made it as well, lost to PSG. They'll made over 80 million. If you look at the other competitions, there is a big drop off. The average for the Europa League is 24 million, so 80 million versus 24 million. So Man United and Spurs have got the same amount of money coming in. I think it looks like 24 million. Chelsea in the Conference League are much lower, just over 10 million. So you can see the value of making the Champions League there is insane for us. So that is a massive boost for us. If we can get into the Champions League, we're going to make a ton of money. And again, that puts us in a really strong position, I would say, going into next season. I did have one other chart, just going back to wages, that I forgot to refer to, and I was going to one more as well before I come to conclusions. Wages in the first season after promotion, it's interesting. We spent 145 million, I think that would say, 22-23, excuse me. That's the highest amount of clubs spent on wages, above Fulham, who went for it, big style as well, and Fulham 2021 as well. They really went for it. Villa came up and went for it, but we're at the top of the tree, which shows how big the owner went for it in backing us. It also shows we took a gamble, I would say, a pretty big gamble, that it needed to come off, and it did, and it's come off better than any of us could ever imagine. We do have a reputation for crazy spending, as mentioned. Our net spend last year was only 11 million. Again, all the context around player sales, but we didn't go crazy, and our average transfer in the red is 55 million since we came into the Premier League, which puts us in the middle of the table. So we haven't gone completely nuts when it comes to transfers. It's volume of transfers, not as much as the fees particularly. So I think that covers all that I wanted to cover on that sense. And I've come up with some conclusions. They're very much personal ones. So you might agree, you might not disagree, but it comes to what I think we can do in the transfer market this summer, or maybe what we should do is more of this is what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm sure the club might view it differently. We know how big Evangelos Marinakis wants to go. So, like I said, I think we're going to be in a great position this summer. We'll be allowed to lose more money in terms of PSR. We'll have a lot more income coming in, so that's fantastic. But I don't think it means we can go nuts in the transfer market for a couple of reasons. Obviously, European football is fantastic, but it could be just a big sugar high, a one-off hit. There's no guarantees of that, and certainly no guarantees of Champions League football year on year. So you can't budget for that every year. Also, as mentioned, we're very much reliant on the ownership, but more prevalently for the transfer aspect of it is we've been very reliant on player trading. As mentioned, 101 million last season. I don't think that is going to change, and I don't think it should change. I think it's a really good model to work from. So I think we're going to have another busy summer of outs. So are those outs what we sort of tried to do last season? Can you find deals for players like Omobamidele, who's done well in Strasbourg and probably could turn a PSR profit for us? I'm sure. We've got O'Brien, we've got Dennis, who aren't going to make much money at all. You could sell Jota, you could sell Sosa, you could sell Taiwo. There are players like that who we could sell, and that could plug a gap, and we could still spend handsomely, I think, and improve our squad very comfortably. So there's no pressure to sell. I don't think, in my opinion, there's no pressure to sell a big gun. But if you really want to go for it, I think it's more likely that a Murillo, a Gibbs White, or an Elanga would be sold for PSR profits of real note, and then you can reinvest that, and then you can go for it. So I think we could sign a couple of 30 million pound players for sure. Instead of signing like an Elanga for 15 million, a Hudson-Odoi for 3, you could sign a Delap for 30 million, a Darwin Núñez for 35 million, as mentioned. But I don't think, and this is only my read on it, I don't think you could sign a Gyökeres or a player in that bracket, or a Cunha, without a sale necessarily to finance further spending to get 4, 5, 6 players that you need to build a squad. That's my take, and again, people might well disagree. But if the Champions League isn't a silver bullet for spending, as mentioned. Again, this is from a previous podcast that I did, but this is looking at spending that Newcastle made when they got into the Champions League a couple of years ago. Their total spend was 131 million, but their net spend came in at 90 million through sales, including Chris Wood, to us. So 90 million is a big spend, but it's not a mental spend, certainly. And then they got into PSR issues, and they had to sell Elliot Anderson to us as well, and they had to sell Minter to Brighton for a really good profit. So it's not the silver bullet, and we know Aston Villa, I've mentioned, far from in the position they necessarily want to be in. Their net spend was minus 75 million because they sold John Duran and Moussa Diaby and Douglas Luiz. But the Duran sale in particular let them do more with their money, and they invested it, for me, really wisely in players like Rashford and Asensio to fill their squad out. But they're on loans, so they're going to be in an interesting position this summer. I was reading earlier about Emi Martinez is a target for and Leon Bailey as well for Saudi Arabian clubs. So the point I'm making is the Champions League isn't like something that's going to solve everything and mean you can just go out and buy everyone you want. I don't see it that way personally. I think there's also a lot of importance and value on wages. Leicester got into trouble when their wage bill went up and they got relegated. So I wouldn't want us to go out and be giving 200, 300 grand a week contracts myself. I think it's more important to try and get Ola Aina, Callum Hudson-Odoi to sign longer contracts You could give Morgan Gibbs White a longer, bigger contract to protect his value and even hype it up. And we also have to take into account that, like I say, other players are going to get new contracts. Nico Williams potentially, players like that who are going to deserve bigger wages. So that's going to boost our wage bill as well. I'm sure players are on really well-deserved and substantial bonuses as well for securing European football, and even more so perhaps Champions League football. I don't know exactly how that works. So for me, I think it's a case of really nailing this summer. It's a massive window for us. If we do really smart business, it's the most pivotal window for, apart from promotion, decades at the club. I think it could really change the direction of things. So really nail this summer. Don't go crazy. Be smart with contracts. I referenced Leicester getting into big trouble as well. Another thing with Leicester was selling at the right time. They didn't sell players at the right time. They had the policy of they'll make one big sale and it will keep them, tide them over. Chilwell, Maguire, players like that. They went away from that policy and they lost Tielemans on a free to Villa, having signed him for 40 million, and they lost Soyuncu on a free to Atletico Madrid. He was in the PFA team of the season. I was reading when I was researching this a couple of years before. So his market value at one stage was massive. So I don't think we could be in that position again with CHO and Ola Aina. So I wonder about whether you maybe even have to sell one of them to protect their value. That's probably a conversation for a different day. So that's a lot of stuff to throw at it. But in general, I think we're in a really healthy position going into this summer. And it's going to be really massive and interesting what we do, especially if we get into the Champions League. So we shall be back talking of Champions League with our post-match show tomorrow. Do check out the opposition preview for the Brentford game and the match preview as well. We've had a ton of stuff since Wembley as well. If you've enjoyed this, found it interesting, even if you disagree with it, do stick a like on the video. It would be great. Do subscribe to the channel. Do consider membership or Patreon, or just give us a lovely review on Apple or Spotify. Right, great to have your company with us. Do drop your comments in below. As mentioned, I appreciate this has gone on for quite a while, but loads of ground to cover there and interesting stuff for Forest around particularly the ownership changes and gearing up for Europe, which I think is a really positive thing to do. Right, so a lovely sunny day. So go enjoy the rest of your day. And if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.